Welcome everybody, and thank you for coming to our session today. We're going to talk about the aging brain and dementia, and what's normal, what's not normal, and answer all your questions. So again, thank you so much for coming. I want to go through a few things as we get started here. So one of our technical things this morning was that the clicker stopped. Lynn Henderson and I are educators, advocates, and realtors in that order. We want to educate people, that's why we do this series, and we're educating you in all aspects of elder, whatever those might be. Today happens to be memory care. Next month we're doing one on decluttering to downsize. We call it deaccumulating. If we don't stop accumulating, we'll never declutter. We provide empowerment through education. That's why we do this. We like to share the knowledge we've learned. We've been doing this for 20 years. Now, if we take the almost 30 years of time we spent with 3 parents with dementia, we've been doing it like 50 years between the two of us. And I like to think and it may be a bit of an exaggeration, we have a PhD in dealing with particularly the world of dementia. But we want to share our knowledge and our experience with people, and that's what we do. We're in people's homes every week, working with them, doing consultations on what their best options are for aging, whether that's in place or moving to a community. We also provide educational resources. Our big one is our resource hub, which is greattransitions.net. And there's a lot of material on there. Now there's some real estate stuff in the upper right hand corner if you go dig for it long enough, but that's not the point of that site. It's meant to be educational for people like you. And I encourage you to share that with other folks. There is no sales on that website. And that's how you register. And we call all that Great Transitions, which is what we do. So introduce our wonderful panelists for today. So Carol, you're closest. You start.
Okay, I'm Carol Daniels. I'm the sales director at Providence Living at Maitland. We are a standalone memory care, fairly new in the area.
Hi, I'm Karen Kuhn. I'm the executive director of the Alzheimer's and Dementia Resource Center. We're a local nonprofit that was created 38 years ago. What we do is we support and educate caregivers of those living with Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia.
And I'll repeat, if you have questions, just hold up your hand, we'll bring a microphone, let them hang on to the microphone, and we'll get your questions answered. If we need to move on, I'll tell you we need to move on, but we do want to make sure we answer.
I just need to know the name of the facility where you work.
Well, we call them communities, not facilities. And the community where she works, I'll let you answer.
Is Providence Living at Maitland.
Where is that?
It is right next to the Jewish school. In fact, our building was purchased from the Roth Center and then totally gutted and remodeled.
Oh,
yeah.
It's next to JCC in Maitland.
Yeah,
Correct.
Don't pass through on time.
Yes.
So, Carol, now that you've got the mic,
Okay.
what are some of the common physical changes that happen in a person's brain as we grow older? I think we think that our brain just keeps running along. We have arthritis, we can't walk as fast as we used to, lots of things physically, but what about the brain?
Well, I think it's different for everyone. There could be an accident where you have that start the process. Dementia is many things, and if you know one person with dementia, you only know one person with dementia. So I think that in my industry, it is about their stories and about their path, and there's no good or right answer to that. There's normal aging, and then there's dementia. I think when I speak with families, what I've circled back most is that if we think back, we probably understand that mom, dad, grandma, grandpa was like that for a while. We just didn't recognize it. So I think that more education and more partnership with people who are astute in that disease is helpful, but it is an individual thing.
Well, I know that as we age, we certainly aren't as strong as we were when we were young. We can't lift the weights we did. We can't walk as far as we could. It's called atrophy in muscles. What about the brain? Does it get smaller as we age? How does it change physically?
Yeah, I think it can get smaller. There's all the technical scientific plaques and all of that happens. but technically, really, it does shrink. And it just doesn't connect with what you're doing. This aphasia and things that happen later on, it's that they know it just can't get out to the body. We have a nonverbal resident in our community, and when I first met her, absolutely no speaking. I walked her out of the dining room one day, and she was totally mobile and could walk. I was holding on to her, and I said, "Susan, you seem like you're cold. Are you cold?" And she actually spoke to me, and she said, "I am." And I literally almost lost it. So, you know, it's there, and every moment is different for them, and so we kind of have to give them a chance to understand where they are in their process. I think that's the hardest things with the family is the denial of what's happening to their loved one. And if we just appreciate where they are, I think that that's something that is helpful for everyone.
So Karen, as we age, as our brain ages, how does that, and Carol touched on it somewhat, but how does that impact our daily life?
Well, I mean, this, and you're talking about normal aging,
Normal,
just
normal
not
aging.
normal aging. Well, it's, you know, it's more of a retrieval process, I think, for it's slower to find a word. My big thing is, I feel like there's a tendency to have a hard time picking up on proper nouns. I know that, you know, I'm watching a movie and I'm like, I've seen that actor before, who is it? And 20 years ago, I would have known right off the top. I would have known who they were. I used to work in entertainment. I would have known who they were dating and and what movies they've been in. Now what I have to do, sometimes I can remember it, but then there's always, you know, these days the internet. But I think that proper nouns are something that I've found as aging is a tendency to have a hard time pulling up right away, but of course it will come. You know, it's the ability, I feel like there's the decrease in ability to concentrate. It's not as easy to concentrate as your brain ages. I feel like there's some mood changes, you know, maybe some irritability that, you know, back 20 years ago I wouldn't have been so irritated by something, but these days I find myself irritated by. Minor forgetfulness, like, you know, where are my keys? That's the common one, where are my keys? But when you know there's trouble is when you don't know what the keys are for. So those are some of the things that I find
So
normal.
what about, none of us have done this, but you walk in a room and go, why am I here?
Well, that's yeah, that happens a lot. That can be a very normal sign of aging. And what happens a lot of times, I know everyone can you know, relate to this. You know, you're watching TV and you go, I think I might want a snack. So you get up to go get a snack, and then the phone rings, and then you talk to the person, whatever. You get off the phone and you go, why did I come in here? And then you go back, sit down. And once you go back and sit down where you were, then usually you can access, oh, wait a minute, I was going to go get a snack. So
Carol, what about things like reaction time and vision as we age? Does the brain controls those, right?
Yeah, I think it's difficult for even normal aging or dementia because slower to understand what's happening, what you want to say, where you want to go, how you want to walk. Your gait is different. Maybe you start shuffling. And so all those things add to what is going to be the best for you moving forward. And those are the things that I think are noticeable to families, but definitely a lot of denial going on in that process. But vision, reaction time, thinking about what you were wanted to say and it just doesn't come out.
Harder to drive at night because our vision isn't as good. Some of that's physical eyes, some of that's the brain. I'll give you all a hint or share an experience. There's a reason we shouldn't be on ladders. And our reaction time is nowhere near what it used to be, and our sense of balance, our mechanism of balance doesn't work quite like it used to be. I used to joke that when I would paint the house, because I'd do it myself, I'd fall off the ladder all the time. It was just clumsy of me. I always landed on my feet. I never spilled the paint. Until about 5 years ago, when I fell off the ladder and went head first into my patio.
Oh.
I got a big scar here to remind me. And the worst part about it was I did it right in front of that young lady. She saw it, so it was a little spooky for her. But then their ladders magically disappeared because my 2 sons came over and said, "You don't have these anymore." And I should not have been on that ladder. So there's a reason not to be on ladders at our age. So Karen, if we could contrast a 25-year-old and an 80-year-old in terms of brain, we've kind of touched on that, reaction times, those kind of things. Could you touch on that?
Well, to me, it's a very general statement, but because a 25-year-old could actually have a processing disorder themselves, so it's hard to really compare. But I feel like the biggest difference is the retrieval, because with our, as age, I feel like, sometimes I keep saying my disc is full. It's like you have so much information up there. I look at your brain kind of as filing cabinets. Maybe it might take you a little bit longer to get to the right filing cabinet when someone's asking you a question or whatever. But what's the positive part of an aging brain is the experience we have, the knowledge we have, versus someone that's 25. I mean, typically the way you see it most often compared is the 25-year-old is so much better at technology or learning technology, whereas an older person may not be. I feel like that's general, but I still feel like as you age, you can continue to learn and things like that.
Well, I think the technology, to a large extent, is they grew up with it.
Yes,
we did
exactly.
not, for the most part.
Yeah.
But we grew up driving cars, and our grandparents probably didn't, right? I often think about my great-grandfather or my grandfather. My grandfather fought in World War I. He grew up in an age probably where there wasn't indoor plumbing in a lot of places. So it's a lot of that's our world. But what about, as the beauty of aging is we have experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you want to touch on that? Well, because we rely on that.
Yeah, well, that's
as opposed to quick reactions.
Right, exactly. And that's kind of, in a sense, part of the retrieval is we have so much information, great information, you're processing it. You have a lot more to process to come up with, your reaction or your answer to a particular question.
I like to use the interstate analogy. When we were young, we had to have quick reaction because we drove like idiots. And now that we're older and we figured out that that didn't get us anywhere, we're so much smarter and we don't drive that way anymore. So we learned. So as we age, though, the things that do change to the good, Carol, would be learning skills.
Yeah, I think social and trying to make new memories is always a possibility. The smiles on dementia faces, if they're doing something creative, is amazing. We made Rice Krispie treats yesterday, and the smiles on their face was unbelievable. Sent those pictures out to the families, and just something that simple with their hands in that bowl doing that, and that was a new memory. So that doesn't really remind them of something before, but it's always possible to make new memories and to have different skills now. It is sometimes said, well, they're not children and they won't be interested in that. Technically they are children, and we have to not only protect them from something crazy, like maybe standing on a ladder, but also have them interested in something that is in the moment. So I think in the moment is great for them, and doing things that they can really have fun and smile.
Okay. Karen, I'm sure you have this conversation multiple times a day with people. What behaviors show the brain isn't normal anymore?
Well, typically it's when it starts affecting day-to-day activities like getting dressed, forgetting to eat. One of the bigger things I saw with my mother is she was somebody that took great interest in clothes and getting dressed every day. You'll see that they tend to wear the same thing over and over and over. Also, getting lost going to a normal place. Let's say you're driving to work every day and you start getting lost doing that. just difficulty performing tasks that are normal to you, and some of the things that you should look for is that also if you're worried about your family members, some of the biggest things that we say to look out for is, one of the things, at that age, there's a lot of there's medications that they'll be taking, and a lot of times what happens is they just stop. They don't have the ability to take the right medications. They'll stop taking the medications, or they won't do it every day. Once again, like I said, they may probably lose interest or forget to eat, or they've forgotten that they ate and they will eat multiple times. That also can happen. Once again, they have more tendency, the balance is also, there's tendency for falling. I know we had that one story, it was very sad a couple of years ago when we had a son. A lot of times, a family member will, the kids will be living in another state or whatever, and we had a son that came to see his mom, hadn't seen her, what was it, either 10 years maybe? Something like that. And it wasn't, he traveled, it wasn't like they'd had a falling out or anything, he just hadn't seen her. And when he got to her apartment, he was just, it was so sad. He was so appalled by the condition she was living in. This was someone who was always very clean and neat, and her, it looked like a hoarder. She wasn't clean herself, things like that. So we get it. That's what's hard, is when people that are losing their memory can, if they know what's happening, they can fake it. I know there's a lot of times they can fake it. So on the phone, if they may sound okay that minute that you talk to them on the phone. But so it's just really important to to actually see the person, because I know with my mom, it used to frustrate me because I saw her all the time, and then my stepsister, someone would come and say, oh, she's fine, for it was the 5 minutes that my mom was fine, and I'm like, no, she's not fine. So I think eyes on the person. But really and truly, it's really the activities of daily living that that are affected. That's the first sign.
So we're on a real high level here today, right? This could be a week-long seminar, because we can get into a whole raft of issues. We're talking about anatomical changes and all kinds of things. But isn't medication handling one of the first red flags?
Yeah, that's what, yes.
Okay, and medication can become really a bad thing. I'll talk about an aunt, her husband died, she had signs of dementia, they really grew fast, and one of the things I noticed very quickly was that her husband always answered for her. When I'd ask a question, he'd answer. He'd just jump in real quickly, and she'd just kind of nod. And I had visited her. He died, she started really slipping, and she never took medicine. She was healthy as could be. She was probably in her early 70s, mid 70s. A frail woman, I noticed that. She wasn't eating, to your point. And she overdosed and died on Tylenol PM. She forgot she took it. She was having trouble sleeping. She just kept taking them, and they think she took 16 of them. And so meds are a huge thing. Are there any other red flags that you can think of? I know meds is always a big one.
Well, just like, to me, hygiene, I know that, to me, hygiene is a huge one. It's like, it tends to be one of the first red flags. It's because usually, and it has to do with, like I said, with wearing the same thing over and over, not liking to take a shower. It tends to, I don't know if it's a sensory thing. Edith, you could probably speak to this.
It is. As the brain changes, so does the body follow it. And one of the senses that gets affected is our tactile sense. So you get a lot of resistance because often the water actually hurts. So,
Carol, what are some ways to, and this is a tough question, I know, but that will help people maintain brain health, so to speak?
Well, I think it's everything that we all know just to stay healthy in general. You have to make sure that you're eating a proper diet. I mean, there's all kinds of studies about blueberries and things that make your brain not deteriorate, but I think just the normal things. No smoking, that makes your arteries in your veins smaller, and so then the blood flow to the brain isn't there. So just everything that we do, social, we saw in the pandemic, that was heartbreaking for us in the industry to experience and see what happened with no socialization. So I always tell families, coming to breakfast, lunch, and dinner is social. That is social. Well, what if they don't want to do activities? Okay, watching, being there with their families, their peers, their new friends, that's social. They don't always have to participate, but social is very important to them. It was important to us during the pandemic, and I think we all experienced and felt the decline. Sleeping is a huge problem in dementia. They don't sleep, or they might sleep a little during the day, and everyone has their wanderers where they just, you wonder how many steps they may have had if they had a pedometer on. But engaging some spiritual is always good if they were that kind of person. But I think just keeping your body healthy is going to help in dementia situations as well.
Well, are there any exercises, Karen, that people can do that sharpen the brain?
Well,
I've got a friend that does the crossword puzzle every day. He says, I'm dementia-proof. I do the crossword puzzle every day.
Well, one of the best defenses is it's a term called building cognitive reserve. And what that does, what that means is it builds the connection between the neurons and helps build new pathways to the brain. It helps reduce, shrinkage and things like that. And so the way to build cognitive reserve is to engage in mentally stimulating activities, which could be one of the biggest things is learning something new, learning a new language, learning an instrument, a new instrument, or if you've never played an instrument, learning a new sport. I know for me, recently I took up pickleball, and I know it's the biggest craze and everything, but it's not just physical. Well, it's great because it's physical, but also there's a joke in pickleball. It's like you can learn it very quickly, but it takes a year to learn how to keep score or whatever. So there's a scoring thing, and there's always a joke like, what's the score? What's the score? So to me, I've noticed it really, it's really challenging me. There's also, the crossword puzzle, like you said, and learning a new hobby, anything that really challenges the brain. Like you can also, right now, just to say, okay, let me just take different ways to work. Drive different ways to work. Maybe not use MapQuest or Google Maps. Alexa, is wonderful, but, Alexa is not going to help you build new pathways, in your brain. So those are some of the things.
Okay. And Carol, tips for dealing with forgetfulness?
I think a routine is very important. Putting things where they belong. My husband needs lessons on that. I said, where is my mirror? He's like, I didn't touch it. I'm like, well, it's not here, and that's where it belongs, and so you need to go find it. Lists are really not evil. I think lists are helpful, and if we think about them and try to follow them, I think that's good. And just really stay involved in activities and social, like we have mentioned already before. Plan what you're going to do. Just don't wake up every morning and wonder what you might do today. So I think having something to do, even if it's little in your neighborhood, in your church, or with your friends, taking a little walk, I think just always being active is a good way to keep things in order, but certainly a routine is definitely, we try to learn the routines of our family members that come to see us, because their routine is enormously important to us. It's going to be different when you have this giant community with these giant walkways and their own little apartment, but certainly what did they like to do? What was their routine like? Did they like to go outside? We have one lady who says, I am never going outside. I hate it outside. We call her Queen Faye. And day before yesterday, I was on the second floor looking down, and there she was outside. I'm like, who put Queen Faye outside? But, you know, just staying active and in their moment, I think in their moment. But organization is definitely, and if we were like that growing up, it probably is helpful as we get older.
So how many of you still get the paper? I know some people do it because they're neighbors. If you go through the paper, you're going to see these things. Affected by Alzheimer's disease, study, this is a good one. New Alzheimer's prevention, possible treatment. I think these tend to lead us to believe that there is some treatment for it. These are studies. And Karen, I'd like for you to touch base, and there's a couple others. Memory care and studies on dementia are becoming much more prevalent. It's certainly not my expertise, but Karen, I know you follow a lot of this stuff. And I'm seeing that more of the caregiver organizations are doing more training in dementia. Kim mentioned that about Flourish in Place and the training that their people go through to deal with dementia for families that bring their services in. So, Carol, you want to talk about the memory care or the studies?
Well, we're actually very fortunate in our area that we have 5 local research companies that specialize in neurodegenerative diseases, which includes Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and other, forms of dementia. I feel like that it's so important to participate in research. It's always a personal choice. If you feel like you have, if you have a higher risk, if you have family members. What's great about these research companies is they are all very community-based. They're really interested in helping the community, and they all offer free, if you just want to get a free memory screening, they all offer them. I think that's a great service to have in our community. If you decide to, what another thing about these different trials that they have is that you can get some very expensive, really great tests for free. And that doesn't, just because you take all this information and they find out you do qualify for the study, you don't have to do the study. You can drop out, you can say, no, I don't want to do it. But they just offer such a great service, and it's a personal choice. I mean, I have Alzheimer's very heavily in my family. And I know that I have the genetic, I've already been tested. I know I have somewhat of a higher risk because of genetics. So I chose to be a part of a study, and what I was able to do is they do blood work, I did an MRI, and then we did a PET scan. And the PET scan these days, they can actually determine if there is amyloid plaque on the brain. I was, I'll have to say, because of my family history, I was just convinced I had it. And so, but I was very happy to know I did not. I got kicked out of the study, which was actually a good thing. So it's a very big personal choice as far as how far you want to go with the research. I feel like it's a great, I'm all for it. I will say my family members, I'm the only one of my, family members that really was that interested in it. So it's a personal choice, but it all is very legitimate. All the companies here, I actually, on our table, I have we put together a list of all the 5 research companies in the area with their phone numbers and their addresses. Like I say, they offer free memory screenings with no commitment to do anything. So I feel like that and prevention there is science-based facts that prevention, the things that Carol was talking about, nutrition, plant-based diet, exercise, getting sleep it's not just good sleep, it's 7 consecutive hours of sleep. Learning something new. There's what? Stress. Stress release, yes. Stress is a killer, as they say. It is very true. It is, really and truly, preventative, it's for Alzheimer's, is very similar to preventive or managing any chronic disease, like diabetes, heart disease. The diet that that you're suggested to follow for any of those diseases also falls in line with Alzheimer's. Sugar is the enemy. It's terrible for your brain. I know I hate hearing that, and I'm sure everyone else does. But it is the truth. So there is science-based, that's the only thing that's really science that we know is there is prevention, and then finding out early if you do have mild cognitive impairment, finding out early and being able to, modify your lifestyle, modify your behaviors is very, very important to fighting this disease.
We're going to delve into a couple of things a little deeper. The names of those 5 companies, they're in the back.
Yeah, ClinCloud, Conquest, Charter, K2 Medical Research, and Headlands Research.
I'd like to ask, because K2 just let me go see the Elvis movie for free, and they said, come, they give you a little spiel before the movie comes on, and they say everything's going to be free, all your testing, there'll be no charge to you. I guess I'm a skeptic when people say, it's going to be all free. Is it really?
It really
so
is
let me paraphrase that.
Let me finish my question. Or because I'll forget. Or do they ask you for all your insurance information and then bill your insurance?
No. It doesn't.
So the question is, are these studies truly free?
Yes.
I mentioned that this could be a week-long seminar,
Yeah,
right?
only when you get
and
it.
again, I want to keep this on a high level. But Karen and Carol, when a family comes to you and says, I think mom, dad, husband, wife has dementia, or I think they have Alzheimer's, whatever term they use, what type of physician do they go to for diagnoses?
Well, it's not just a neurologist. It has to be someone that specializes in the dementias. It's sad to say, but a lot of neurologists in this area have no clue about Alzheimer's disease or other forms of dementia. They really don't. So it really needs to be, we have a list that, I can provide you that we know. It really needs to be someone that specializes in it. And
we hear this.
It's memory disorder clinics is what they're called.
We hear this frequently. I took him to the doctor and they had a nice chat.
Yes.
Mom said, hey, I'm great. I feel great. I don't know why I'm here.
Yeah.
Well, that was a clue, because they didn't know why they were there. And but they went to the family doctor, the family practitioner, who doesn't do that, and might have been close friends with the family and didn't want to, and wanted to ignore it. So it's critical you get to the right kind of doctor.
Paul, could I
Yes, ma'am.
just ask our panelists to address at this time the need to maybe have a good overall physical exam to eliminate things like UTIs or depression, where the symptoms might mimic
For sure.
or cover?
No, good, a very good point. Make sure you rule out everything else.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And there's also medicine toxicity can also present as dementia. So it's so important to get like a full physical workup, because there's things that like depression, all of that can mimic.
So we got another question, Judy. Joanne?
You hear a lot about Parkinson's. Is that associated with dementia and Alzheimer's? Is that
Okay,
in
so
that same category? Parkinson's
disease, are there issues with Parkinson's that bring about dementia? I may have not asked that question.
It's a brain disease, so it can be.
We see stress, to your point, Tish, when we're working with families and they're deciding whether or not they can stay in the home. And one of them is just, they just can't concentrate. They can't keep track of anything. They don't write it down. They ask the same question. And then once we get them moved to, in this case, a community, and their world changes and all that stress goes away, they're whole new people. Now, they may still have some cognitive issues, but they can carry on a conversation, and lots of things happen. Anything you guys can think of we missed other than the week seminar that we have to do this?
I can't think of anything.
I think we didn't talk any about safety, so I think that that's something that you also have to, as a family, determine, because we talked about the ladder, but did we talk about there's a bathtub? Did we talk about that you have throw rugs? Did we talk about they wear socks on their tile floors? Did we talk about any of that? That is going to potentially be something. So that's where as safe as they can be is something that you need to look at along with the ADLs.
And I know one thing I want to repeat this. Absolutes that the home's no longer safe.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I feel like that safety is usually the deciding factor. I know it was with my family when we decided that my mom was no longer safe in the home and needed to go to a memory care community. It was all really comes down to safety. So thank you for bringing that up.
Why did you come to that conclusion? What behavior caused you to come to that conclusion?
Well, it's more what could happen. What could happen? It's you know, the stairs. You know, my parents' house, they had stairs. The bedroom was upstairs. The tile floors, the rugs, the dog. There was just, you know, it was, you know, there's just so much. And
Garbage disposal.
yeah, and then the stove.
You're missing something.
The stove. I mean.
Well, one we see frequently when we're doing consultations with families she keeps telling us they want to go home. 6 o'clock at night, they want to go home. They walk out the front door, and if I don't there to stop them, I find them 5 blocks away. And when I say, what do you mean? Because they'll argue, right? You are home. You are home. No, I'm not. I don't live here. I live in, we had a lady, I live in England. Mom is in England. She's waiting for me. It's time to eat dinner. That's called elopement. And when we start getting into those situations, the home is not safe. They're going to be better off because you can't be awake 24 hours a day.
No.
Their day may start at 2 a.m. And so, and that becomes another thing we see. I want to give, go ahead.
Let's not forget that elopement, been outside, got picked up by the police, but it really only happened twice. Okay, so they already know, Mom, they already had to go pick her up. Please know that that is super important. That is probably the biggest denial that I see. But she only went down Maitland Boulevard and then fell on her face and then was picked up by the police. Okay, one time, I never say DCF to scare the families, but it's real, and you will be making decisions that you didn't even think about making, and it's going to be now. So I think safety is the same as elopement or their behavior.
Well, another thing is car damage. You come in and there's car damage to Dad's car or whomever, and my dad was a lousy guy. He was an obstetrician. He was always thinking about the baby he was getting ready to deliver. So he hit things all the time, and you know, wasn't in a car. Well, if you're seeing that, we have said, because we always ask when we get in these situations, so are they still driving? Well, they're okay. I mean, they only go to the grocery store. Well, what about, I mean, are you going to let them? Well, until they have an accident. Well, what if that's running over somebody? So you've got to keep people safe and away safe from themselves too. I want to give you a little homework. There's 2 movies. Write these down. I'll Be Me, the Glenn Campbell story. I'll Be Me, the Glenn Campbell story. I think that's on. It's on the streaming platforms. You might have to pay $3 for it. It's the story of Glenn Campbell, his final tour, what was going to be a new tour, it became his farewell tour. And it's raw footage. You're going to see some really powerful stuff in that. And then there's another movie, and I think, Lynn, What They Had, Hilary Swank is in it, S-W-N-K, Hilary Swank. She is the out-of-town sibling. Her brother is the in-town sibling, telling her that these things are going bad. Huge elopement issue with the mother. She just disappears in the winter. My dad went outside his building in January and couldn't get back in. He was in a community at that point. We didn't have memory care back then. He was in an independent living with caregivers. They were sleeping. He went outside in January at 3 in the morning, and fortunately somebody came along. So what they have with Hilary Swank and the interactions of the family are incredibly powerful in that movie. and it's you'll see it, and as you become more familiar with it, you'll see how the husband and the daughter are covering. They constantly are covering for the mother. She didn't know he was her husband. The wife did not know that man was her husband. Oh, is he my boyfriend? Didn't know that. And she'd wake up in the middle of the night, why are you here? Get out of my bed. So, any questions? Yes, Jan. Wait just a second.
You make it sound like it's almost inevitable that we're all going to get some form of this.
Okay, so the statement is...
Varieties, you got people here.
No, it's not inevitable. There's things we can do, and we've talked about those. There's these guys at ADRC run clinics all the time, seminars all the time on it. There's Tam Cumming.
Yes.
Tam Cumming. If you look her up, she does monthly seminars, webinars that are very powerful. Tam Cumming. Another one's name is, I'm sorry?
How do you spell her name?
It's Tam and Cummin, I believe.
Cumming?
Tam Cumming Dementia Care.
Yeah.
She's
affiliated with Arden Courts or whatever.
Yes, she's affiliated with Arden Court.
So, yeah.
And she does a very powerful one. She's the positive approach to dementia. You guys are positive approach to dementia. Are you doing any seminars yet?
Us, we are.
I know you are, but is Providence yet?
No, I mean, our engagement director is TP Snow trained.
Right.
And, there's David Troxell. There's plenty of people that I call gurus of the industry, and you can pick one and follow it. I think it's great to have the knowledge.
So the other name is Teepa, T-E-E-P-A, Snow, as in snow. And if you can get on and see her videos, she will act as the person with dementia. And it is very powerful. And she also talks a great deal about how to interact with people with dementia. There's all kinds of ways, things to do if you are in a situation where you're worried about elopement. Try to keep them in the home longer. Caregiver organizations, Kim's group, Flourish in Place, they've trained their people on dementia care, so they're familiar with it. Not all caregiver organizations are alike, and not all caregivers are alike. And if you've got a dementia person you're trying to keep in the home and keep them safe, you need to have people coming in that understand how to deal with that.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah.
Part about need, help?
Yeah.
Well, I'll rephrase that. If you have somebody in your family with dementia, you have to have help, period.
And
It's
not
not
2 days a
need,
week.
you have to. It'll kill you, statistically, it'll kill you taking care of a person with dementia on your own.
50%.
And I say to family members, and then what are you going to do? We've got a family now we're dealing with, and oh no, I can't put him in one of those places because only I can take care of him. And I said, well, who's going to take care of him? She has heart issues. She needs knee replacements. She's got all kinds of health issues of her own. And there's no answer to it. So, any other questions?
Thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
The good news is there's a lot of information out there for you. Karen, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say one great resource for if you're looking for the prevention methods. It's the if you're on Facebook, it's Sherzai MD. So it's SHERZAI MD. They call themselves the Brain Docs. So on Facebook, they're on Facebook, and then on Instagram, it's just the Brain Docs. They are, to me, the best resource for prevention. It's all science-based. They have a thing called the Neuroplan, which talks about, what we've been talking about today, nutrition, exercise, reduced stress, sleep, that they all Neuro stands for all of those. They also have a book called The Alzheimer's Solution, which is great, but if you, I feel like that they are the best out there for understanding, and they talk about it in it's not too sciencey.
So repeat that URL, the address.
It's the Sherzai. It's SHERZAI MD. That's it. That's on Facebook. And then on Instagram, it's just the Brain Docs.
They have a whole website too.
Yeah, and it goes into detail about the neuroplan. They've done tons of research. They're out in Loma Linda, California, which is one of the healthiest places in the, I don't know if you're familiar with the blue zones, which are the 8 places in the world where people have the longevity and disease reduction, and the disease levels are way below average. And Loma Linda, California is the only place in the United States that is one of the 8 blue zones. And
So to wrap up, I do want to bring up one other thing. If you're in a situation, again, parent, it could be a sibling, for God's sake, or a son or daughter, or a sibling, but where there's a dementia situation, before it gets worse, make sure you get with somebody like Linda Solash-Reed, who's board certified elder law attorney, and get your legal documents in place. Make sure they get them in place. Because if you go into the attorney and they don't know what's going on, the attorney will not let them sign documents. And you could be in a horrible, horrible mess on any one of a number of issues, from medical treatment to if they're at a point where they need to start selling assets to get money for the medical help to try to sell the properties, which is where we run into it frequently. So make sure you do that. Ma'am.
How do you know when you need to get powers of attorney?
If you don't have one, well, wait a second. Let Linda answer that. How do you know when you need to get a power of attorney?
If you're talking to me now, it's time to do it now, but actually every adult which means once you turn 18, you need a power of attorney.
Anyone over the age of 18 needs to have a power of attorney. If you don't have one today, you need one immediately. Yes, sir.
What are some signs, what are some good signs that you need power of attorney?
Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't you stay after and ask that question, because we're running out of time. And we can go over that. But to have the legal things in place is incredibly important. So,
can I just say one thing? When we meet with our families and we give them a care coaching, the legal aspect is just as important that we say with diagnosis. It's the first and second, and it's really the 2 things that we talk about first.
So did we try to sell you anything? No. Told you I was going to ask you. Good. I challenge you to bring a guest next time. I trust this was good information. I know it was a lot of information. And then, for there's assuredly nothing dearer to a man or a woman than wisdom. And though age takes away all else, it undoubtedly brings us that, wisdom. And that was by Cicero, Roman philosopher. Thank you so much for coming. God bless. And I trust we'll see you next month.